Hello there, Seraphim17 once again. This is Dead Space 3. This is the impossible difficulty walkthrough, and this is chapter 13, Reach for the Sky. Now, that dude there is the guy who's boinking Ellie. I just boinked him off the cliff through jealousy and various other reasons. And now we're going to be scaling the cliffs of Volantis, as this is chapter 13, Reach for the Sky. And immediately, it looks like there's a nice little resource centre for our bots, so we can send a scavenger guy off, try and find us some goodies. And this is an optional room right here. You can just rush straight forward, get to the cutscenes coming up, but you'll miss out on the opportunity to recover your bearings, go to the bench, and pretty much get ready for the sequence that's about to come, because the next few encounters are extremely combat driven. And for a game that is essentially very combat driven, these ones are more so. There's a couple of, I'm not going to say challenging because I don't think they are challenging. I think they're kind of cheap. It's one of those where there's 3 guys in front of you and there's 2 guys behind you, and you've got to like prioritise on getting rid of one direction so you can spin and kill the other direction. And if you do it okay, if you control it well, you'll have no issue. If you don't, or if they start mutating and getting the extra forms and it takes a little bit longer than you'd like, you might get clobbered from behind. And on Impossible, it really hurts. But you'll notice Force Gun and Seeker is pretty much the combo I think is the most effective on the game. I believe everybody's going to have their own personal combination, but this one, if you haven't tried it, it is a monster, an absolute monster. I cannot recommend it enough. The only drawback is it's very easy to miss with the Seeker because the limbs are quite small and the aimer is quite small too, so it definitely rewards precision, and in a panic situation it's easier to miss than it is to hit. But if you can keep your composure and your trigger finger and your aim's not too bad, it's one of those weapons that's really going to pay the dues for you, because it's just so damn good. And I will say this much, guys, if you are intimidated by pure survival mode or hardcore mode or classic mode, if you beat the game on Impossible on your own, you're going to have no problem with those difficulties, because I started Classic the other day, and it's easy. I died once in getting all the way to chapter 5, and the reason I died was on one of those flying sections where a piece of debris hit me, and it was silly. I've never died there before. It was just one of those ironic things that because I was streaming it, I fucked up type deal. And on hard, this game feels like an older Dead Space, because when you shoot something in the leg, it takes the leg. Then you shoot them in the arm, and it takes their arm. Then you stasis, then you kinesis the arm and fire it at the friend. Things go down real quick. And I was using an unupgraded plasma cutter, so it felt real simple. And I hope that gives people, a nice optimistic view on some of these more challenging difficulties, because even hardcore, the hardest thing about hardcore is the intimidation factor, that you don't get to respawn. That is literally it. Once you can get over that and you don't panic, hardcore is just simple. It becomes quite trivial. But this is the beginning of the obsession with climbing, rock climbing, abseiling, all that good stuff. And I do think that this could have been significantly better if it controlled well, if it controlled fun. It just doesn't. It feels really loose, it feels really silly. A lot of the times it does things like that to make it look a little bit more, spectacular than it is. But I don't know, I really don't like these sections. I think these sections could have been so much better, so much more interesting. I mean, I'm not asking for a kunai climb, because I think we can all agree that Ninja Gaiden 3 had the best climbing system of any game. But it's like, why? Who put these things up here? Did somebody climb up this rock just to lay more rock climbing apparatus? And I've mentioned earlier that they could have put a really interesting reason for why you do the mountain climbing, other than, yo dog, it's a mountain. Watch this. Don't do that. That is just cheeky, that is the ultimate con. You press to evade it, and the game's already preset for it to move. So if you carry on going the way you weren't going to take any danger, and I jumped into danger, so be very careful. You'll notice it takes quite a lot of life as well on Impossible, so not the most fun you could have, but these sections could be better, they could be less frequent, and they could be less bullshit. And that's all I'm really going to say on them, because I want to try and stay as optimistic as I can about the rest of this guide, even though I do believe the last half of this game is terrible. I say last half, the last quarter. But we've got a lot of healing stuff. We're pushing forward. We're going to be entering into some caverns. In these caverns there's going to be some black necromorphs being introduced, and the black ones are tough. We all know this. We've played Dead Space before. And it is quite an interesting location, this. I wish it was used more often. I wish there was more to the snow and the caves in this game. It seems to be, you know, just little bits here and there, and then military installations. Here's the miraculously co-op ladder that works on your own. It's a shame it wasn't that effective when Carver's with you, but there you go. I would actually recommend as well not carrying the rivet gun underneath the plasma cutter. I would also recommend not using the plasma cutter, because on this game, it ain't that good. It is the sad truth that everybody will realise at one point when you're taking a beating for no reason because you're using a weapon you had a lot of faith in and they've just kind of nerfed it. But this encounter, you cannot kill the ice climber guy until you trigger him to turn around and scream at you. Me and a friend have spent quite a lot of ammunition shooting him in the hand. It does nothing. You need that to happen. As soon as that happens, the fight is engaged. But be careful, because there's a lot of necromorphs about to come your way. So I run over here, trigger this guy. Force gun with stasis is overpowered. Force gun with stasis is overpowered. It's just delicious. And then the Seeker takes the limbs. I should really be using my stasis to grab the limbs and fire them, but you'll notice there's a couple of awkward spawns in this corner, so be very careful, guys. Use your stasis, use your crowd control tools, be it the rocket launcher, the shotgun, whatever you're using, and just be aware that, see that just then? Guy behind me. There's always a guy behind you on this game. It frustrates me to no end, but it's how they've decided to do it. And before, when you went forward, it was usually a vent blowing out behind you. But on this game, some of the necromorphs are so quiet that you just don't hear them when they're there. But as soon as the music subsides, you know that you're safe, or you know that either an enemy's glitching out, like this guy. Watch this guy. He cannot find me for the love of anything. It's so good. His pathing and what have you is just, he doesn't know what he's doing. He's like, I'm going to get Isaac Clarke. If I could only figure out how to turn round the corner. I mean, look at him. Nowhere to be seen. He doesn't know where he's going. There he is, no idea. There you go. But he's still alive, so we need to be careful, because never underestimate these fishermen dudes, these ice climber, Scooby-Doo ghosts, bullshit guys. I hate them. They're the most frequent enemy in the game, and they're one of the fastest. There's also an achievement for killing people with their axes, which is going to be quite difficult to do, because whenever you try and pick them up with kinesis, Isaac wants to pick up everything else. It's ridiculous. He's picking up other people's children instead of the axes in the heat of battle. It's just not cool. But a lot of loot in this place, a lot of decent circuits you want to be picking up. Just be aware that when you're going into a dead end, chances are something's going to either pop up in front of you or behind you. So always be, on high alert. Always have your crowd control just in case, everybody's closer than you expected them to be. Because this game is essentially, the old games were more about aim, I felt. If you could aim and you knew what to shoot, you could win. Take the leg, take the arm, use the arm to take his buddy, That was the game, and I got really good at that. On this game, it seems more about crowd control, because the leg takes a little bit more damage than you used to, they're a little bit faster than they used to be, and before you know it, they're jumping towards you, which they always did, but they didn't used to hit me as much as they do on this game. So crowd control is so important. But there's another save point. By this point, I just said point twice, very close together, and I'm not sure why. But at this stage of the game, I think you'll be well aware of how bad the autosave system is, and how much everybody kind of wishes that Visceral had stuck with the traditional manual saves. Because the irony is, when you did the manual saves, the checkpoint system was very rampant. It was all the way through the game, and I don't know, maybe it's a conscious decision because they felt it made the game too easy with the checkpoints being reliable. I'm not entirely sure. I am definitely of the belief system that checkpoints do not make a difficult game. It is the balance and the nuance of the encounters and the enemies that you fight that produce legitimate challenge. Checkpoints just kick you in the balls when you're down, and that's illegal in MMA. That's illegal when you're standing up in MMA. But this is an interesting one. These two whiptails will spawn at a very large distance from you, but they haven't quite figured out the good old left turn, so they're going to run around in front of us, and this is target practice, but one thing you're going to notice with the Seeker if you're using it, the bullet has travel time, and because I've never shot at this kind of distance, I haven't really noticed that the projectiles move as opposed to just being an aught and a 1. So I'm going to miss quite a lot, and I'm going to burn quite a lot of ammo here. And if you're going for the pure survival route, which I'm attempting, which is essentially, I'm not crafting any ammo, I'm just scavenging. Every so often if I get to a section where, you know, shit hits the fan, the game gets a little bit too ridiculous, I'll craft some ammo, but as it stands, up to this point, I have not crafted a single piece of ammunition yet. The first time I'm going to do it is in Chapter 4, and then onwards from there, it's going to be much more frequent, just because the enemies, it turns into Gauntlet at some point, this game. It's just a million dudes in the same place, it's Smash TV, it's ridiculous, and ammo is, you just bleed ammunition. But there is a bit of an epiphany that comes with it, because I realised at some point that carrying 2 weapons on this game is pointless, in my opinion. And the reason I say this is they both use the same universal ammunition, so the entire concept and point of having 2 weapons is when your one weapon fails you, you can swap to the other one. A lot of the times that's usually ammunition related. When you run out of your main weapon, you swap to your secondary, and if they're both using the same ammo, you're using the potential backup supplies of the weapon that you're keeping on hold. So it's kind of futile, and the only real benefits to it is to have a weapon for every situation. So for instance, if you've got, you know, a specific problem and a specific technique of handling it, you've got a weapon that does that for you. You pull that out when that situation arises, and it cleans the floor. Put it back, get back to the workhorse, and carry on. And I think that's a bit of a shame. I think the ammo system on this game is more accessible. It's definitely more of a Mass Effect 2 type deal, but I think it makes it less enjoyable because of that. Because one of the things that is key to any survival horror game is ammunition management, and there is a certain extent of that on this game, because at times your supplies can get low, but the resource system completely breaks the ammo system. Because if you wanted to, you could just craft new ammo for days, and you get so much scrap metal that there's an abundance of ammunition, and that kind of kills any tension that you'll get from not having bullets and every fight, you know, needing to scrounge for that extra bit of dollar. So it's a weird system. This is one of the rare climbing sections where you get to shoot some things. Once again, my memory of the names of these enemies is not great, but I believe they're called lurkers. I used to call them the baby dog tentacle guys, but they no longer have the face of a baby. And I do think the baby face was worse. The new face definitely looks like it's infected, but aside from that, it's not that scary. But there's a couple of enemies that are absent from this game, and I'm very curious. I might tweet Visceral, see if I get a reply from like an art designer or something like that. You know, someone who's not massive in the company but still a really viable part of the dev suit. Because I want to know, man, where did the brutes go? Is there some tea party happening someplace where all the brutes are just sat around chilling? I don't know. Same with the really lanky things. Because this game has took the lanky thing's head that used to crawl around like something out of the Thing, and they've used it to infect bodies and turn them into gunning zombies. On the old games, there was an entire creature that looked like that. It was like a really lanky thing, and each limb you blew off had legs, and its limbs like walked about, and it didn't really do much. It was kind of pointless, but the first time you saw it was a little bit scary because it was fast, it was tall, and it didn't make much sense. But he's completely gone in this game. I've not seen him once. But a nice little respite right here, moment of silence as we progress onwards. You'll notice I'm tempted to throw out a bot so I can get some more of the ration seals. They are useful. The Mark V pieces do give you passive abilities, they also give you a custom finish, but if I'm completely honest, and I always am, they're not as good as I thought they'd be. Like, I unlocked an overclocked something for beating the game, and I'm not entirely sure what that sounds, but to me, when you overclock something, that means it's going to be twice as powerful as it was before, because you're pushing it to the brink. You're pushing it to the fullest potential it can go. So to me, that would be the equivalent of having a second colour going over the same bar to show that you have 2 bars of strength on a weapon. Because can you imagine 2 bars worth of damage one shot anywhere on an enemy kills them. It'd be so cool, and that would be overclocking. Or a system similar. Oh, this is bad, this guys. As soon as you trigger the assist, this black guy turns up behind you. So that were a mistake right there. Did not mean to stamp, and I paid the price for it. But it worked out okay, because the assist came, and it helped me blow up the black necromorph. So, you notice I was looking for it just then. I was looking to try and use the assist again, and I did. But I am so paranoid about things behind me, because this game just loves doing it. So cheap. Really cheap. But what I was going to say before we got our back against this imaginary wall... In Mass Effect 1, they had this ammunition system that I loved. It was a high-power, highly explosive, highly ridiculous ammo type. But the drawbacks were, if you fired it too frequently, you had to recharge the weapon. It would blow the heat source on the weapon, and you had to wait for it to cool down. And that, to me, sounds like the perfect idea for overclocking something. Just imagine a plasma cutter where you could focus a charge into a single shot, which made it overheat for a few seconds before you could use it again, but the damage output was, quadrupled. It'd just add layers of depth, layers and techniques and stuff. In this age of extremely accessible games, I'm still craving more depth, I want them to go deeper with systems and functions. Because I think that's what we're losing, and that's the irony of it, especially when it comes to RPGs. RPGs back on the PS1 were convoluted and complex as shit. I played them when I was young, and I still kind of grasped them. Didn't completely understand them, but I figured them out, and I felt good for doing it, and they had a lot of depth. RPGs nowadays, we've got all the technology in the world, but the systems are simpler than they've ever been. Final Fantasy 13. Press A to win. Hold forward to traverse the linear path of straight lines. Like, anyone would think the fucking Romans designed that game, because it's just straight lines. It's so strange, and it's the same with action games. Mass Effect 1. RPG, shooter, science fiction thing. Add a lot of depth, add a lot of weird things, add a lot of, design choices that some people questioned, but added a whole bunch of strategy. Mass Effect 2 came out, streamlined it, Michael Bay'd it, put Will Smith in it. Just, so different. We're losing the depth, we're losing the learning curves. And that's why when a hard game does come out, like Dark Souls, that doesn't hold your hands, everybody's pissing the pants and crying and saying, it's too hard, it's too this, it's too punishing, it's one of the hardest games I've ever played. It's not. It's not one of the hardest games you've ever played, it's just you've got so fucking soft from playing easy mode on every game that's ever released, that this one comes along and kicks you in the balls. And it asks you for your milk monies. It's an interesting scenario. And I'm curious to see what people's thoughts are about the impossible difficulty on this, because a couple of people so far who have commented think that this is harder than the old games. A couple of people think the old games were harder. I think that's a difficult question to answer. And the reason for it is because we've got extremely selective memories. We can be on the worst part of a game in the history of games, and the minute that we do it, the euphoria of victory completely erases the fact that we were willing to punch a baby to get to that victory, from sheer frustration. So, it's easy to say that this game is the hardest and the other games were easy, because you haven't played them in a while. And sometimes when you go back, you surprise yourself. But I think Impossible is definitely a challenge. I'm not entirely sure how the life and the armor system works, because I haven't upgraded them, so I don't know how much of a difference full armor makes, full life makes. I assume your life's going to go down your back to the bottom of your spine, but I wouldn't know. So this is a gang of pukers, the redesigned pukers, which I really don't like. I think they look stupid. Kind of like Majin. No, what am I going to say? Jar Jar Binks. That's what they remind me of. Because they've got that floppy hand walk that he uses. And it's really strange because they don't look intimidating at all. And they used to look real intimidating. And the irony is, when they turn into the black versions of themselves, they go back to the old puker design. The actually good puker design. But something to note as well, you haven't seen the transition, but you saw it just then. I now have a ripper underneath my plasma cutter. I kind of use it for a brick wall effect, so that when they run into you, they get rippered, and then you can continue to shoot them with the plasma cutter as they get sawn to pieces. It's a strategy that does work, but it definitely suffers on co-op. because the enemies are like juggernauts on co-op. And that is on impossible difficulty before somebody says, I think the enemies are easy, because, you know, a lot of people argue points when they play on normal. Can't really argue about the hardest difficulty when you're playing on normal. Well, that's what I think anyway. That doesn't mean that points aren't valid on normal, it's just a case of you can't say the enemies are easy on normal, when on impossible they're slightly different. But this is another one of those slidey boxes, which I'm not a big fan of. And I actually thought that when you overloaded the power box, it damaged your character, because it sounds like it does when it sparks. But I don't think it damages you. I think it's just pantomime to show you that you messed up. But this sequence here, we're going to be doing the power box. We're going to be raising the elevator for the Black Lady, Ellie, and Carver. And then we're going to get separated from them, because such is the way of Dead Space. And on the next video, we're going to be killing the Snow Beast, finally. And the encounter, if you don't know what you're doing, can be quite difficult and intimidating. But if you know what you're doing, he's an absolute cream puff. The only problem is a couple of the necromorphs in the environment might punch you around a little bit. But I kill it really quickly, so hopefully if you follow the technique I show, you'll have no issue either. Well, I made a mistake anyway. I said that the boss was going to be on the next video. It's actually in this video, so my bad. There's going to be a transition during this sequence here, directly to the boss fight. So here we go. Back in the snow, with our saving in progress. Right. So I'm going to drop down the scavenger bot, because... oh no, I'm not. I wanted more money, more resources. And I come over to this, which triggers the boss. Here he is, I assume the replacement for the brutes. He's a pretty shit replacement, because I think he's vagina with legs. But then again, everything on this game, in boss related, seems to be a vagina with legs. That right there was a failed super sexy action roll. Then I got punched by a jumping necromorph. Fuck you, necromorph. So the first thing you want to do, turn this big boy on, like that. Get some space from the boss, use your stasis, get away from the enemies. And you want to stand over where these lights are. So what's going to happen? Kill the necromorphs around you, give yourself some breathing room, take out the tentacles on the boss. He will then get skewered by the machines. Then you need to run over to that machine on the right, and you need to use kinesis on it and tap B. If you do it correctly, you will kill it in the first engagement. And this should be pretty simple. Now that we've cleared out those bothersome necromorphs. There's the last piece. Run over to the machine. There's the skewer. Wrong side, Chris. There it is. Tap it. B, 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 B. Keep tapping that B, keep tapping that B, keep tapping. And you're going to rip it apart, thank Christ. There you go. End of this guy. Hate that guy. And then if you go up to his body, he should leave a box of spare parts, and you can loot the area for some ammo. And then there's some more rock climbing, because the one thing I thought was lacking from Dead Space 2 was an overly large amount of rock climbing. But this is probably going to be me pillaging this area, so I'm going to leave it to trail off. So thank you for watching, guys. I hope you're enjoying the guide. I do apologise about the copyright dispute that made it a little later than I would have liked. But you're going to be getting it in full force now, and hopefully it's going to help. All the other content on the channel will resume, sorry, not consume. It's going to take over the channel. No, it's going to resume after this guide, because this is a priority, this is important. Everything else will continue as normal per the Seraphim 17 channel. So, thanks for watching. You take care now.